No deadbeats allowed at Thanksgiving this year. We're only having your brother and his family, my dad sneered into the phone, letting the word deadbeats hang like steam from a kettle left too long on the flame. My throat went tight. I could hear my daughter in the other room humming the tune from a cereal commercial, the one she sings when she's trying not to cry. I pressed my palm to my chest and felt the small wishbone charm I've carried since Mom's last Thanksgiving. One arm snapped, the other smooth as sea glass. The house smelled like cinnamon and dust. The radiator hissed. On the table, a coffee ring had dried in the exact shape of Idaho. Funny, the things you notice when your heart is breaking in slow motion. Hi everyone, my name is Sutton Vale. And if you think a label can tell you everything about a person, you've never read the fine print on the human soul. I swallowed. That. I already ordered the pies, I said soft. Pumpkin and pecan. He chuckled without warmth. Your brother's got it handled. Real men step up. You, try not to embarrass yourself this holiday. The call clicked dead. I stood there, the quiet roaring. The wishbone's broken arm pressed into my palm. In the window, the sky over our street looked like bruised fruit, purple with a rim of gold where the sun was slipping away. My daughter wandered in wearing mismatched socks, one with tiny foxes, one plain gray, and leaned her head against my arm. Are we not invited again? She asked, like she already knew the answer from the way my shoulders were set. Not this year, I said. My voice didn't crack, it hardened. That surprised me. I opened my laptop. The cursor blinked like a metronome for my heartbeat. On the screen was the email from earlier. Escrow. Final clearance received. A PDF sat attached with numbers that looked unreal, commas like tiny gates opening. A silent green light after a decade of being told to stay in my lane. I didn't text my dad back. I didn't plead. I slid the wishbone onto my daughter's palm and closed her fingers around it. Make a quiet wish, I whispered. In the glass, our reflections overlapped, hers small and fierce, mine steadier than I felt, as a delivery van pulled up to the curb with a crate addressed to me, stamped with a mountain outline and a single word burned into the wood. Welcome. The crate thunked against the porch railing like punctuation to a sentence I hadn't said out loud yet. I opened the door, the November air slicing clean across my cheeks, and the driver tipped his cap. Signature, he asked. I scribbled my name and the crate was officially mine. My daughter hovered behind my elbow, curiosity sparking like static in her eyes. I pried the lid open with the small flathead screwdriver I keep in the kitchen drawer for assembling cheap furniture, and inside, nestled in charcoal foam, sat the hand-forged brass key. No ribbon. No cheesy brochure. Just raw metal, cool and golden, shaped with ridges I traced instinctively like braille. Underneath, an envelope sealed in deep burgundy wax. Summit of Morrow Ridge Lodge, my lodge, finally cleared, finally real, finally mine. The lodge was 3 weeks away. Paint curing. Chimneys being tested. Staff contracts pending final signatures. And my father, in his little suburban dining room, had absolutely no idea his deadbeat daughter had closed on a property larger than 3 of his investment homes glued together. My phone buzzed. Family group chat. Their photos were coming in. My brother's wife wearing a glittery gold sweater, holding a glass of wine like she was the first person to ever discover Cabernet. My brother grinning, carving up a turkey like he personally hunted it in the wild. Dad laughing in the background, his new blessed family only caption stamped across the image in cursive font. I didn't reply. My daughter looked at the key. So, are we having Thanksgiving alone again? No, I said. We're not doing alone. We're doing unexpected. She blinked. What do you mean? I slid the brass key against the grain of the table. Scritch, 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 the metal catching light like it was sharpening itself. We're not begging for seats at their table anymore, I whispered. We're building a bigger table. My heartbeat synced with the radiator's hiss like a drum warming up before a performance. And for the first time in years I did not feel small. I felt like the opening credits had finally rolled. Like the story had just begun. 3 weeks blurred like wet ink spreading on paper. Contractors emailing updates, the interior designer sending mood boards, the lodge's cedar beams being sanded down to a satin finish so the fireplaces wouldn't smoke. Every night after my daughter fell asleep, I'd sit at the kitchen table with the floor plans spread out like treasure maps, tracing the silhouette of the mountains with my fingertip, imagining the sound of wind threading itself through pine needles like violin strings. I didn't tell a single person in my family. Not one. Silence became my sharpest tool. On the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, the family group chat lit up. My brother bragging about how exclusive Dad's table was this year. My sister-in-law gushed about premium seating, like the living room suddenly became the Met Gala. Dad wrote, "We're doing Mountain Lodge vibes this year, using your brother's photos from his Aspen trip." I almost laughed. Mountain Lodge vibes. They were staging the aesthetic they thought belonged to better people. And here I was building the real thing. I screenshotted nothing. I typed nothing. I simply packed. On Thanksgiving Eve, I slid the brass key into my daughter's palm again. "Tomorrow," I said. She grinned, not wide, not childish, but with a quiet, knowing heaviness. She understood this was not about bragging. This was about dignity. We drove early. The road wound like a dark ribbon through fir trees, frost glinting like powdered diamonds on every branch. And then the lodge appeared. A wall of timber and stone rising from the cliff, balconies cantilevered like open arms over the valley. The windows, floor to ceiling, held the reflection of the sunrise like gold poured gently across glass. Inside, everything smelled like cedar smoke and honey wax. The chef came out from the kitchen and said, "Welcome home." The way he said it, not polite, not formal, but like he meant it, made my eyes sting hard. My daughter leaned over the banister toward the main living room below, the same one I had chosen fabrics for, and whispered, "Mom, this feels like the beginning." The next morning, Thanksgiving morning, I walked barefoot across the heated lodge floors, each plank warm as if sunlight lived inside the wood. My daughter padded behind me in her foxprint socks. In the great room, the chef arranged the table. Hand-thrown ceramic plates, linen napkins the color of muslin, a centerpiece made of pine cones and dried oranges strung with twine. The windows glowed like cathedral glass, each pane framing the valley like a painting someone forgot to sign. I checked my phone. The group chat was pinging. My brother. "Dad wants everyone here by 3. Dress classy, Sutton. No need for drama." Dad followed it with a thumbs-up emoji, the cheap kind of approval he only ever gave when he wanted to rub salt in a wound. I typed slowly. "Me. I won't be able to make it. Already hosting Thanksgiving. But you're welcome to come here instead." I attached one photo, just one, a single shot of the lodge's great room. But I took it with the curtains half drawn, so only hints revealed themselves. The beam angles, the mountain peaks reflecting in the glass, the amber chandeliers shaped like inverted starfields. Not bragging. Not flaunting. Just possibility. Silence hit the chat like a blow. 30 seconds. Nothing. A minute. Still nothing. Then, "Dad, whose place is that?" "Brother, this isn't yours." And all I replied was, "Keys in the drawer." I placed my phone face down. I didn't need to see their scramble. Outside, the snow started, slow at first like the world exhaling feathers. The valley softened under white. My daughter stood by the window, watching flakes dance like ghosts slipping between pine branches. "Do you think they'll actually come?" she whispered. I walked toward her, the smell of rosemary and cranberries floating from the kitchen in warm red gold ribbons. I kissed the top of her head. "They'll come," I said quietly. "Pride bruises fast. But envy moves quickly." Behind us, the fire crackled. The very first log of the very first Thanksgiving in a place they never believed I'd own. They arrived faster than I predicted. It started with headlights carving sharp white lines through the falling snow. First one car, then another, tires crunching over the gravel like bone under ice. My daughter pressed her palms to the glass, breath fogging the window. "Mom," she whispered, "they're here." I didn't rush. I let the moment move slow, like a director letting a shot breathe before cutting to the next frame. The front door swung open before I even reached it. My brother stepped inside, dragging the cold with him, his expression caught between smugness and confusion, like his brain was lagging behind what his eyes were seeing. Dad followed, his mouth hanging open, his eyes saucer-wide at the vaulted ceiling, the panoramic windows, the stone hearth taller than any of his rental properties combined. Snowflakes melted instantly on his coat, leaving dark wet stains like fingerprints. "This isn't yours," Dad whispered, the words brittle. I didn't raise my voice. "It is," I said. "Closed escrow. Fully paid. 3 months of legal hell. But I didn't need to announce it before I built it." My brother walked deeper into the great room, fingertips grazing the edge of the table, as if touching it might break the illusion. His wife's gold sweater sparkled under the amber chandelier, suddenly looking tacky, like costume jewelry at a diamond gala. "How did you?" Dad began. "By working when you thought I was failing," I cut in gently. "By choosing persistence instead of performing perfection for your benefit." He swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing like it was drowning in his throat. From the kitchen, the chef carried out the turkey, roasted until the skin glowed bronze, steam rising in silky ribbons. Cranberries glistened like jewels. The smell was honey thyme wood smoke home. My father glanced at the door, like pride wanted to drag him back outside. But the warmth here was gravity and he sank into it without meaning to. "You can sit," I said simply. He didn't thank me. He just sat, slowly, like his bones had suddenly aged 10 years. My daughter slipped her hand into mine. And in that moment, I realized something. Silence had become my sharpest form of speech. My daughter squeezed my hand once more, then slipped away toward the balcony railing, watching snow swirl in spirals beyond the glass like white ashes rising from some invisible bonfire. The table glowed, candlelight flickering against cedar grain, turning every plate rim into gold. My brother sat stiffly like a man in borrowed clothes, while his wife scanned the room as if trying to find flaws she could weaponize later. Dad stared at the antler-shaped chandelier like the weight of it might drop at any second and crush him. No one spoke. So I broke the silence, not with hostility, but with calm. "You called me a deadbeat," I said, voice low, steady. "But a deadbeat is someone who stops trying." I never stopped. Dad inhaled sharply, not a gasp, but a small, shocked breath like he'd lost his footing on the inside of his own narrative. "Sutton, why didn't you tell us?" "Because you told me who I was before knowing what I was building. Because I learned that some victories don't need permission slips." But I didn't say that. I only said, because I wasn't building this for validation. The chef placed the carving knife beside the turkey. My brother reached for it, reflex like he was the only one worthy of carving. I gently placed my hand over the handle before he could touch it. "No," I said with a soft finality. "This table isn't your stage." His face flushed. "Dad always." "Not here," I interrupted. "Not at this table." He froze. Not because of my tone, but because the hierarchy that once fed him power was gone. There were no witnesses here who owed him applause. Only consequences. My father's shoulders sagged, not in defeat, but in recognition. Recognition that he had placed his bets on performance, glitter, noise, instead of grit. My daughter returned and sat beside me, resting her head against my shoulder. She didn't need to speak. Her presence was enough, like warmth in the middle of a blizzard. I picked up the knife, slowly, and carved the first slice. My father whispered, almost choking, "This is the best view I've ever seen." We ate in a strange, quiet reverence, forks tapping ceramic like tiny bells, steam rising from the plates like the lodge itself was breathing. Dad kept glancing at the windows, at the way the mountains seemed to press close, like nature itself had come to witness this reversal. My brother chewed slowly, jaw tight, his ego dissolving in real time. His wife wiped her lipstick print off her wine glass as if trying to erase her earlier confidence. After dinner, I rose from the table and walked toward the stone fireplace. A leather folder lay on the mantel, the same one the attorney handed me during final sign-off. I opened it, slid one page free and placed it gently on the table. Not aggressively. Not theatrically. Just placed. A copy of the deed. My father stared at it like it was radioactive. "You paid for this outright?" he muttered, voice paper thin. "Yes," I answered. "By doing things you didn't think counted." My brother leaned forward. "So what, you're rich now?" His voice had no venom left, only confusion. The kind that comes when you realize you've been miscalculating someone for decades. "I'm not flaunting wealth," I said. "I'm demonstrating that respect should never be based on status, but on integrity." My daughter reached into her pocket and pulled out the broken wishbone, the one she'd been keeping safe, the jagged arm glinting in the light. She placed it on the table right beside the deed. Dad stared at that wishbone like it was a funeral photo. As it was. It marked the death of the story they wrote about me. For a long moment no one spoke. The fire hissed. Snow tapped the glass like gentle knuckles. Finally my father cleared his throat. "Sutton, we were wrong." I didn't soften. I didn't rush. I just met his eyes. I know, I said. You chose ease over truth. My brother rubbed his temples suddenly small. So what now? He whispered. I walked toward the balcony, pushed open the glass door, let the cold air wash in, sharp silver cleansing, and said quietly, "Now, you see who I always was." The cold air carried pine and silence, that rare mountain silence that doesn't feel empty, it feels earned. My father stepped toward the balcony, shoulders hunched, coat sleeves still damp from melted snow. My brother hovered behind him, chin lowered like a student waiting for results. For the first time in my entire life, they weren't the center of the room. They weren't the storytellers. They were simply present. Small. Human. My daughter slipped her mitten into mine. The tiny broken wishbone arms still lay on the table inside, framed by candlelight like a tiny monument to the version of me that died just so I could finally live without apology. I looked at her and saw everything. The way her eyes reflected the valley lights, the way she leaned slightly toward the warmth of my hip like she trusted gravity less than she trusted me. Dad cleared his throat. "Tell us what you need from us," he whispered. I didn't move. I didn't rush. Revenge didn't need to shout, not tonight. It just needed to settle into the fabric of who we were becoming. "I don't need anything," I said quietly. "I just needed you to admit what you refused to see." My brother nodded slowly, painfully, like loosening a knot in his own chest. "You built this," he said. "Without us." "No," I corrected softly. "I built this because of you." Silence again, but this silence didn't bruise. It clarified. Inside, the fire popped, embers snapping like punctuation marks at the end of an essay no one expected to read. My father's voice cracked. "Can we come next year? Properly? Without judgment?" I turned back toward the table, the view blazing behind them like a stained glass cathedral, and placed my hand gently atop the broken wishbone. "You don't need to earn your place at my table," I said. "But you do need to recognize that I no longer beg for a place at yours." My daughter smiled. A real one, the kind that has a future inside it. We closed the balcony door, sealing winter outside. And in that warm cedar room, we finally sat as equals.